Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the VolQuest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. Brent Hubbs, glad to have you along with us on this Tuesday. Plenty to get to as recruiting, I won't say heats up, but it gets interesting for sure down the stretch here, heading to signing day. Tennessee coaches are on the road.
Who said January was boring?
January is just different. It's just the volume of things in January is different. But there's plenty to get to on the recruiting front, and we're going to get to all of that and kind of dive into the last week and the week ahead as well. Talk about plenty of other things in football. Let's start first with the Tennessee basketball team, Rob. Ugly first half against Vanderbilt. I guess a better second half. Tennessee beats a really bad basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the one hand, you want to really take some positives from that because it was the best offensive half of basketball they played in a long, long time. Scored 46 points, shot 67%, but as you just said, that's a bad Vanderbilt basketball team, and then lost 24 SEC games in a row, which is incredible. It's getting ready to be a record. Sewanee, I think, currently holds it. And I don't want to say it's 25. Back when did Sewanee leave the league?
Right.
It's noteworthy. So
almost as noteworthy as not making a three in over 1,000 games or whatever.
So, I mean, but Tennessee has been so bad on offense. You still have to leave that game feeling like maybe that they found a little something. I mean, they only took 8 3-pointers. I think that was a big step in the right direction. After the previous 2 games combined against South Carolina and Georgia, they chucked up 57, made 12, which is kind of an exercise in futility. Jordan Bowden was a lot better. So, I don't care how bad Vanderbilt is. As bad as Tennessee's been on offense, I still feel like maybe that they at least left that game with a blueprint for how they need to play. Bowden's got to put it on the floor, get to the basket. You got to get out and transition some, but still, it's a team with some problems.
Yeah, no doubt. But they ran the floor a little better. Bowden get to the free throw line. The question is, can he do that consistently? Can Fulkerson run the floor consistently, and some of the things that we saw them do against Vanderbilt, who was bad in transition defense. You got Ole Miss coming to town tonight. Interesting Ole Miss team.
Yeah, I mean, they've
got some talent, but
they've got one of the best players in the league, in Breon Taylor. But they're 0-4, much like Tennessee. I mean, Taylor's the only senior on that roster, so kind of a transitional year for them. Just I like Tennessee's chances tonight, but this isn't a team that can take anybody for granted at all. And they've got to get this one. I mean, me and Austin were talking the other day. If you look at the schedule, these next 2 SEC. I mean, throw Kansas out. I mean, I'll
you can be 5-2
if they handle Ole Miss tonight. Mediocre Texas A&M team next Tuesday. They're 5-2 in league play, a little less than halfway through, and you give yourself a chance. So I mean, these next 2 home SEC games are big.
Yeah, a huge one tonight. Interesting in the league, it looks like it's Auburn, Kentucky, and then kind of everybody else.
You kind of think that, but I throw LSU up there. I mean, they're undefeated, they're at the top, and Auburn just is coming off a horrible week. I mean, Florida's good, but Alabama is not. Alabama hammered them. Florida, I mean, Auburn scored 43 points at Florida. So, Auburn is still, certainly in the mix for the league title, but just a really down year in the SEC.
It's just not a good year.
I mean, no top 10 teams right now. Only 2 teams are ranked: LSU and Auburn, 15 and 16, I think. And LSU is the lone undefeated. Just not a lot to get excited about with SEC basketball.
Maybe you're not talking about getting 8 in the tournament at the end of the year, like everybody's lobbying for the last few years.
I'm trying to think right now. I mean, is there more than 3? Is there more than those 3 teams we just talked about? I mean, who else is?
You got Kentucky's going to get in.
Kentucky, LSU, and Auburn are going to get in. Arkansas, maybe.
In Lenardi's latest thing, he had Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, all kind of in that first 4 out, last 4 in, next 4 out type of bubble deal. And that came out before this week started.
If Tennessee's going to stay in that conference, I mean, they absolutely have to win these next 2 at home. As Austin just said, that'll put them at 5-2, and then things get tough. You got, looking ahead to the next week, you've got 2 road games against Alabama and Mississippi State, neither of who are great, but Tennessee's going to be an underdog both those games.
Right.
But I mean, if they could somehow get a split, They'd be 6-3 halfway through the conference season, but then you got the back half of the schedule. You got 2 games against Auburn, 2 games against Kentucky, Florida at home. You go to Arkansas. I mean,
it's a brutal finish.
I can see Tennessee, losing 5 or 6 of their last 9.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah, it's tough.
And not playing bad. I mean,
right. Well, the question is, how much better is this team going to get? Can they get any consistency? I mean, what's this team going to be 2 weeks from now? Is the second half, not that you're going to shoot 67%, but is the second half, the way you attack the basket in the second half against Vanderbilt, is that really who you're going to become night in and night out against some teams that will defend you, which Vanderbilt won't? I think that's the question.
Yeah, I think they actually will get better. I just don't know that that's going to show up in the one-loss column.
Right.
I think this.
How much better are they going to get?
Plavsic is going to, get better, give you a little more, but the back half of the schedule is so heavy, weighted that way that I think they can be significantly better than they are right now, and it's not going to show up in wins and losses.
Yeah, but again, as you mentioned, the back half of the schedule looks rough, and then you have a week where Auburn no shows for a week. And because of the roller coaster that this league is, I guess you never know. I mean, Georgia looks good at home, hammers Tennessee, goes to Mississippi State,
Loses by 40.
Just gets absolutely hammered. So when you're not a very good league overall, I guess anything can happen. So we'll see what happens with this Tennessee basketball team. But as Rob mentioned, these next 2 SEC games are absolutely huge for this basketball team.
Love a home 9 p.m.er, right, Rob?
Not as much as Rick Barnes loves the home 9 p.m.
Not a fan. He's not a fan.
Nobody's a fan of the home game 9 p.m. start, but that's what you get tonight with Ole Miss.
I'll be interested to see the crowd when you
win 30 degrees, 28 degrees.
And they had a couple last year and still had good crowds, but they also won 31 games.
Right.
And we're ranked number 1 in the country. So I bet it cost them tonight.
Yeah, I'd say it probably should hurt them tonight. I mean, they're not playing great. You're not nearly as good as you were a year ago.
And this is not Florida or Kentucky.
Right.
It's an 0-4, 0-4 in the SEC Ole Miss team.
On a night where it's really cold in Knoxville. I don't mean to harp on the weather, but cold weather sucks. It's just the bottom line. I hate cold weather, and it's really cold right now. So we'll see how that shows up. All right, let's get out of the cold weather and turn up the heat a little bit on recruiting. First of all, Harrison Bailey, already here, obviously, but he does get his 5th star that everybody's been wanting and looking for. I think that is a product of a guy who was a good player as a junior, good player as an 8th grader that everybody knew about. But if you watch his sophomore, junior tape, the way he plays compared to the way he played his senior year, that is a guy, Austin, who was a much better player in his senior year. Physically different, and not that he played poorly as a junior, but he was better his senior year.
Well, yeah, he was, and Jesse's talked about it several times, just how he kind of transformed his body, his lower body, his legs, become much more of a threat to if things broke down, he could make a 8 or 9 yard scramble, and pick up a first down to extend a drive or just make a solid play with his legs. And then, of course, I mean, his ability to throw, it's never really been questioned. I mean, he throws a pretty ball. He's got nice touch. And again, I mean, what they did winning the state title this year, again with Jesse, I mean, like B.J. Ojulari is one heck of a defensive player, but the fact he's on your offensive line at the high school level and when he's one of your better linemen, Harrison didn't exactly have a big wall up there in front of him, and they still were able to go out and win a state title.
Yeah, I mean, he was throwing to dudes. He got
100%. But I mean,
bunch of his guys.
He wasn't. Like you can have the greatest wide receivers, but if the protection's not there, unless you're throwing a bunch of bubble screens.
I mean, I think it's well deserved. I mean, he had a fantastic senior season. He was right behind some all timers in terms of the Peach State at the high school level. Guys that have gone on to great success: Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, all those guys have had varying degrees to immense success to really good success. So I think it's well deserved, and he's on campus, and every Tennessee fan will kind of get to see him in the flesh this spring. And I'm sure whatever throws or runs he has in the orange and white game is going to be dissected for the next 4 months as we enter the 2020 season, and folks are like, still kind of shrugging their shoulders about JG.
Yeah, some people, Rob, will be ready to build the bronze statue and give him a gold jacket, right?
I thought I saw a pickup pulling the general statue down as I was coming to tape the podcast today, so to make room for Harrison Bailey.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's already a lot of hype and a lot of expectation, but it does even change that even some more. That there'll be some people, and look, he's going to go compete for the job. He might win the job, but there are going to be some who just expect him to win the job because, quote, he's a 5-star, and he's the only 5-star quarterback on the roster in the room, and Tennessee wasn't exactly getting stellar quarterback play a year ago.
I don't know why this became a conversation last night in the chat, but there's no need to go down like whatever revisionist history of who was and wasn't recruiting Harrison 2 years ago. The fact of the matter is Tennessee's staff, headlined by Jim Chaney, really like the guy they have now because of the leaps he made as a senior. Case closed. That's it.
Yeah.
That is what happens in college recruiting across the board, where evaluations change and opinions change all the time.
Yeah, because, and again, I don't want to go down that path either, but there was a point in time where they were coveting highly a quarterback in Texas who goes to Texas A&M while they had Harrison Bailey committed. It's not to say they didn't like Harrison Bailey, but
they hadn't seen him play as a senior yet.
Right, and they hadn't seen this new version of Harrison Bailey.
Right.
And to Harrison Bailey's credit, when Jim Chaney and Jeremy Pruitt and Chris Winkie told him what they needed to see out of him, he said, okay, fine. And he went and did it.
Right.
And he went and really enhanced his game, which is a credit to Harrison Bailey, and the coaching staff is elated that he's here, and everybody's excited to see what this competition looks like in the spring,
and how well he throws it,
how they manage the reps,
5 guys,
and who ends up being here when spring practice is over, right?
That's right. And for Harrison, I mean, much like, I think Josiah James is a good example. Josiah at times shows flashes of why he was a 5-star, but again, he's still a freshman, so he makes those typical freshman mistakes. The same thing's going to happen with Harrison Bailey. The kids, even if he's got a great offensive line, you're still gonna make those rookie mistakes, and much like he got better from sophomore, junior year to his senior year, he's going to get better here. And so it is hard, but that's when you're in a quarterback and you've got that kind of ranking, it's hard not to have the weight of the world on you as far as expectations. I mean, there's really no you can't slow down the train on the tracks on that one.
No, it's a full speed freight train out of
with no brakes,
out of control. Exactly.
But there are still, there are shades of there's shades of 5-star. I mean, you got Nix at Auburn, and you got Trevor Lawrence. I mean, both those kids are 5-stars, and they're different. Different caliber players.
Right. They are. That's a good point. Everybody's a little bit different. And again, it's fit, it's individual players' development. I mean, all those things. I mean, I look at the NBA right now, and of course, Zion Williamson hadn't been on the court unless he got on the court last night. I don't know if he played this weekend or last night or not, but he's battling
tomorrow night.
First game's tomorrow, Wednesday night.
All this stuff. He was billed, and he's been hurt, but he was billed as the, quote, savior to the league, or the next great thing for the league. And the kid at Murray State that's at Memphis right now,
Ja Morant,
was a good player, but he played at Murray State. I mean, he's been the most exciting rookie to watch in the NBA.
Rookie of the year.
I mean, and so the point being, you never know exactly how it's going to play out and who's going to show up. So I will say this: Tennessee's elated with where Harrison Bailey is, how he arrived on campus. They like what he's done to this point, and they're excited to see what he does in spring practice. All right, Austin, we got to let's go back and I guess put the bow tie and the close on this Jay Hardy thing if you want to, because I know it's been requested multiple times to discuss it in the podcast. Jesse, you can jump in here too. Let's just talk about, instead of just burning the kid down the road, which is not what you want to do or anybody wants to do. Just how did this happen?
How did it slip through?
Well, just I mean, why? I mean,
the kid told Tennessee in the living room multiple weeks before the early signing period. The family told Tennessee in the living room multiple weeks. I mean, I'm talking like both visits.
Right.
We're not signing early. He's going to wait till February. This and that, and Tennessee checked it Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, nothing. Friday at midnight, nothing. But in that same database, Friday at midnight was Darnell Washington signed with Georgia, Zach Evans signed with Georgia, much like a year ago when they checked it. There was Hazelwood at Oklahoma, and so Tennessee took it at face value that at the end of Friday at midnight, Did they check it again? I was told
no.
No,
I was told no, and I do think that was a mistake by Tennessee not to check it on Monday morning.
But with that said, when a kid's, you take the kid at face value, the family at face value, and then you look at the website and he's not there for
3 days.
Yeah, end of business day Friday. I understand why Tennessee just said, took him at his word. Where I think that's a fundamental flaw, and just a breakdown. This is not on the kid, okay? The kid obviously, tweeted at me, "I'm not signed yet," and we all know he had. But that's not on the kid, man. To me, this is on the adults around him, his family, the people that play instrumental parts in his lives that are adults, the people at Auburn. At the end of the day, Tennessee's got several people on this staff that worked with either Rodney Garner or other people on that staff. They knew. So you're telling me that you shouldn't? Wouldn't have picked up the phone call and said, "Hey, look, I know you guys have been still trying to recruit him. You don't think he signed? He actually signed with us. You didn't hear this from me." I mean, I understand why some fans are like, "Man, what was the end game here? Were they trying to set Tennessee up? Were they, again, I don't find flaw in Jay Hardy. I mean, obviously, he's 17, 18 years old. He's got to make his own decisions. But this, hey, I've said or done things at 17 or 18 that I look back and go, "Man, that was dumb." Same thing with this kid. I mean, I find more of a flaw with the adults around him than I do the kid himself. But with that said, the Auburn people that have tweeted at me about ruining the kid's moment, no, I didn't. The kid had his moment when he sat at the table in the fall and picked up the Auburn hat and put it on. He was just merely fulfilling that moment by signing with the team that he had originally committed to when he had the original moment. If he wanted a second moment, he could have flipped to Tennessee or someone else. I didn't run any moment. So that whole notion that the Auburn fans are trying to message with me to me is just stupid.
So what should something be done that you can't do this, that you can't keep it quiet for past a certain period of time? I mean, is this because I don't know what the end game is. What's the benefit of it? I mean, what was the benefit of it for Auburn or any adult for them?
Well, the argument from his side, that camp, is that, and they have maintained this throughout, is that he wanted to sign with his teammates. That everyone at McCauley doesn't sign until February, and that's what he wanted to do.
Well, you can still go have your ceremony.
And I agree, and I think that is the easy retort to that statement. I also think, though, that there is some negligence again. I think Tennessee does look a little bit silly that they didn't just check again on Monday. That Tennessee knows that sometimes in these instances it can take up to 48 hours or whatever for these deals to process. So for whatever reason, Auburn does it late on Friday, and then Tennessee doesn't check. And so is that camp, the other side, do they look worse because they're trying to play this whole obfuscation and trying to play this little, cat and mouse game? Probably, but I also think that, Tennessee's got a whole lot of people working in that building that have access to a compliance computer that could just get on and check a kid's name Monday morning, and then you don't send 3 kids to a basketball game.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I think in talking to some people that Hardy's camp indicated to Tennessee that he has shut it down. He was done before they ever went to the basketball game. Never said he signed, said he was done. But in defense of Tennessee, well,
you can keep swinging there.
We're going to go until you look us in the eye and tell us don't come back, type deal. So I get that part of it. I guess this is a byproduct of the early signing day, Rob, that you've got to hit refresh on a database to make sure the kid, when he looked you in the eye and told you, "Hey, I'm not signing," and for 3 days he didn't appear to have signed, that you can't trust that. You got to go back and check it.
Yeah, I mean,
over the Christmas break.
I'm kind of with Jesse, but at the same time, I mean, this is a kid you've been dealing with for what, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the kid, but as Austin said, the adults around him. I mean, and that to me is just kind of baffling. How the parents, the coaches at McCauley wouldn't pull somebody aside and said, "Hey, you're."
It certainly smells. There's no doubt that it smells.
It smells more that no one said anything when Tennessee's coaches arrived to watch him play. That no one said, "Look, hey." And
people they've been dealing with for months,
and here's
years.
I mean, family, close people around him. Yeah, I don't have any idea what the Macaulay. I mean, I'm not going to sit here. I don't know what the Macaulay coaches knew. I mean, if he signed and faxed it in from a hotel room in Orlando, while he was at the basketball tournament, who knows what anybody knew or didn't know. It's just another byproduct of the early signing period of things you've got to, the things you've got to cross-check. Because, to my knowledge, this is the first one of these that has happened.
It's the first one we definitely have heard about. I will say, just in a larger scale, this is just another instance of kind of the underbelly of recruiting where, from both sides, from a player's perspective and a coach's perspective,
it was a lose-lose?
No, there's just a lot of gray. And there's a lot of guys not being truthful to each other all the time.
Absolutely.
And this is a case where multiple parties participated.
Right. Here's what I do know. People brought up people were trying to throw the people at Macaulay under the bus, Coach Potter, or the AD, or whoever. I've been around enough high school coaches that are just aloof to what is going on in a premier 4 or 5 star top talents recruitment. To insinuate that the people down there knew and didn't say anything, I think that's just wrong. Because in my experience, a lot of these coaches, they're going to help the kids to a certain point, but at a certain point, they are very much unaware of what's going on around them as far as who signed, who didn't. Right.
And everybody's situation's different. And so that's why it's not. It's hard to make blanket things. Other than the blanket lesson here is you better refresh on the database to see and double check and make sure that you're not getting played that way.
I could see them coming, and I'm not saying it's going to change just because of this one incident, but I could see them where they make it to where, okay, nothing's going to be announced as far as who all signed. It'll be in the database, obviously, if you want to look. But once the second major All-Star game, so it's it's the Under Armour and then the All-American Bowl, once that takes place, then everybody that's signed, there's going to be a blanket release on everybody that's signed. You know what I'm saying?
But it's there if it's already in the database. The lesson there for schools, and I'm sure this has been reminded in recruiting offices around the country everywhere, is you got a month dead period where you can't go out on the road. Before you go back out on the road, you cross-check everything.
Yeah.
And you double-check everything. And I think ultimately that's the lesson that is learned from here.
They're checking the portal all the time.
Right, you're checking the portal, so you check that at a time. So anyway, Jay Hardy's officially off the board and done. That leaves Tennessee, Austin, and Jesse, Rob, everybody at D. Beckwith and.
That's the $1 million question.
Best available, I would say Malachi Weidman. Obviously Tennessee has went. If you're taking right now, I think it's way too early to say Tennessee's a major player for Zach Evans. Does he make it here this weekend? That happens. That changes things. But for me, we'll see how things go coming off. Feeling him out, seeing if he's got interest. He's only been here the one time. He visited Georgia, which is the school he originally signed with, on a Saturday for one of their big junior days. He came up here on Sunday. Nobody was here. It was a very, I would say a dull trip to come by here. So, I think part of his knowledge of Tennessee is not not that great, because the visit, I think, was just kind of just a token run through campus and that kind of thing. Can they get him interested enough to come in here for an official visit this weekend?
So that's a swing this week, to see if you can get him to town.
Yeah, he's going to Florida for the final weekend.
And then if you get him to town, who knows what happens? But that's
the story of Zach Evans. Who knows what happens?
Well, and that's one until somebody has a copy, a PDF file with validated signatures on it of an NLI. Nothing really counts there, right?
He may just go to the XFL. I'm joking, but that goes to the who knows what's going on type stuff.
Because George is back in play.
Apparently, they're talking to him. I don't know how serious it is.
And nobody really knows why they cut him loose.
There is no, and again, this is where there is no.
Has anybody ever cut somebody loose?
There's a lot of chatter out there.
I mean, has that happened in basketball?
cut somebody from an LOI.
There's an early signing period in basketball and a late signing period in basketball. This is brand new in football. You've covered basketball for a long time. Has anybody signed in November, got out of a letter, and then re-signed in spring?
Minus a coaching change, or just not. Right. I can't remember one like this, where it's just
especially for a guy that's a top 10 talent.
Yeah.
And now suddenly that maybe LSU's not recruiting,
and especially not one where it appears it was the school's choice.
Oh, it's absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I can't. That's the.
That TV interview that he did with Dion at the Under Armour game is one of the strangest. When he's like, I don't know exactly who Zach Evans was talking to. I mean, I've heard theories, I've heard whatever, but when he's like literally pleading to college coaches, that was a wild deal. So this is one that Tennessee obviously will.
Or maybe he just wanted to take the semester off. He's already graduated. He's just hanging out.
Well, he wanted to go to. He wanted to enroll early.
Yeah.
He wanted to show up to a school on January 3rd, but nobody was going to take him.
Nobody at that point. I mean,
but now everyone's circling back because again, the kid is an immense talent.
Right.
And so
either they've found enough to where they're fine with what was the January 3rd red flag, or I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. It's
not just the cell phone story.
Yeah, there's plenty.
For programs who have looked the other way over a lot of stuff in this league, I'm not trying to disparage the kid. I don't know. I'm just saying it's pretty naive to think there's not something there.
Yeah. Yeah, and now we'll see what happens. Tennessee's obviously knocking on the door. Florida would like to make a big splash because they need some running back help. How serious is Georgia back involved? A&M's been there.
If he visits here, there will be one other person that does visit here too, and that'll be Brady Ward, the offensive lineman. I think those two I won't say they're tied together, but I think they're a
little connection.
They're taking the same visits together.
So we'll see what happens with him in turn with
and
Zach
does that
Evans.
Squeeze out a guy like Caldwell? He'll be at South Carolina this weekend. Can Tennessee even get Jerry on campus?
I think he's going to South Carolina the following weekend.
Or maybe that's it. He's the last visit to South. So Tennessee basically has to get him on campus this weekend.
Yeah. And Clemson was going by there today to kind of deliver the verdict on whether they wanted him to officially visit this weekend, which would knock Tennessee out for him.
Yeah, that one seems like Tennessee's trending the other direction a little bit on him right now with Caldwell, just because.
Well, it depends on what Clemson does. If not, he'll come here this weekend.
Unless Tennessee decides
Zach Evans and
they're
Brady
going
Ward
to different. I think they'll still bring him in and play the best available card. All right, D. Beckwith. I had a chance to visit with him, talk to him. I know you've talked to a lot of people around him, Austin. I don't think Tennessee did anything bad this weekend with him. I think it was a good visit, but his quote to me about I just kind of like Florida was a little bit of a, that he's just got a little bit of fandom for the Gators, even though he's not been there a whole lot. On the flip side for Tennessee in the positive vein, I think close proximity, fact that family can see him, brothers coming here.
As a preferred walk-on.
I think he's comfortable with things here. He likes the relationship with the coaches. I think he likes the way Tennessee's got an offensive plan for him. So I think there's plenty of positives for Tennessee. Just don't think it was tied in a pretty little bow and put to bed for Tennessee this weekend. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a total coin flip. I think that if you just listen to all the positives, Tennessee's positives far outweigh Florida's. But you're right. He's kind of just enamored with the Gators, and
they're getting the final visit.
So
unless he goes to Kentucky the last weekend,
or unless he comes back up here unofficially.
Does he come back up here unofficially the last weekend? He has a weekend, or does he not do anything that last weekend?
I thought that was that was the whole reason he moved it for his senior day.
That's on Saturday, but potentially he could come up on Friday.
He was very uncommitted. I don't think he's going to go anywhere the last weekend, personally, based on what he said. I'm going to be. And I think this is a key for Tennessee's chances. Who goes with him to Florida?
Yes, I agree. If
who goes on the visit?
Dad, who did not come to Tennessee, if he goes to Florida, Mom. I don't think if one of them goes, it's fine. I just will be interested if Dad goes. He did not come up here. Mom came up here, and of course Cam's going to go with him as well.
I think it's important for Tennessee that Cam is with him down there because I think Cam's clearly recruiting him to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I think Cam is a guy who points out things to D to make sure you're looking at, to make sure you're seeing the whole big picture and you're not caught up in, flashing lights or anything like that. So I think who all goes on that trip is going to be really important for Tennessee as they try to close that one out. All right, so you got Zach Evans maybe, you got Caldwell, you got Weidman, who we think Tennessee put their best foot forward with him, although he's been quiet since then. You got Dylan Spencer, who was in town.
Yeah, Spencer just seems like they're going to have to. Tennessee's going to have to miss on a lot for Spencer to end up in this class. I can put on the board. I can see a scenario where he does, but Tennessee's going to have to miss on a lot, and then he's going to have other options: Missouri, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. All those are in play for Dylan Spencer. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think he's got I think it's an uncle or a cousin that was an All-American at Ole Miss. And it just sets up, they've got some room down there, to potentially, stay in state.
Yeah, we'll see where he's supposed to visit Kansas and then Missouri. Does he take that Kansas trip this weekend? Does he drop Missouri for an in-state visit? That type of thing. Family was really impressed with what they saw here. They really liked it up here. But does he get caught up in the number squeeze? Because it's Beckwith and then best available out of those 4 or 5 names we mentioned is what it feels like right now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that 2's the number, but it could potentially be 3 if they hit the right,
If they hit the right.
If it's Zach Evans and they take whoever they have to take.
All right, let's talk about the 2021 kids that were in town this weekend. They had a bunch of good-looking kids. The Mims kid, offensive tackle, all-world. Great that they got him on campus. I think Tennessee's fighting a huge uphill battle there. You got Georgia's in play. Grew up liking Alabama. Alabama's all over that. But Tennessee got him on campus. We'll see if they can get him back.
The Vandergrift deal does not help Tennessee in that respect.
No, and the Vandergrift deal sounds like that's been done to Georgia for a good bit. I know it was official today, but it sounds like that one's been done for a little bit of time here. And he's obviously going to stay close to home and play with, so where grandparents could see him every week.
Which makes a guy who was on campus for Tennessee all the more important. I mean,
Vayu.
Do you go hard on Vayu? I mean, the Canadian kid is playing down in Maryland. Yeah. Acevet's been working hard on that one.
Who would you not? I mean, who else? I don't know where he's at on their board, but in looking at quarterbacks out there, to me, Christian is the one they have the best shot at because they have the best relationship with him. He's been on campus multiple times. He clearly has a relationship with Acevet. They talk on a regular basis. When you talk to quarterbacks out there, he's the guy that talks about how much he's interacting with Tennessee more than some other kids to me. And we know quarterbacks are coming off the board in the next 3 to 4 months, right?
Well, I mean, really, Vayu and Caleb Williams, and there's a couple others out west are really the only, I think, blue chippers even still out there at all now that Brock's committed. And I know Tennessee has some interest in Caleb Williams. I posited 3 months ago, I was wondering why they hadn't offered him earlier. But that's one that they're chasing a little bit. I mean, Georgia was in that fix, and now Georgia's out. But, he's visited Oregon several times. LSU was thought to be serious. He was at Maryland, I think, just last week. So I think Austin, Tennessee's going to have to go, if they really want to get in there, they need to obviously get Caleb on campus. But Vayu certainly seems like the best option for that 21 class.
Well, and he was here last summer and worked out for the staff. We watched him throw. And when he came here for a game this fall, now he's back for another junior day. He's the one that seems like you have the most traction with outside of that's uncommitted. Now, committed, Drake May would be that guy, but he's still committed to Alabama.
How serious is he really looking around? And if he does look around, does North Carolina get in play? I mean, I'm not saying you pass on those guys. It feels like Christian is the guy that
is the most realistic of the guys that is on your board.
All right, as we wrap it up here, any other quick notes from the 2021s? I know we had a ton of stuff out there. We're going to have a ton more things out there. Anything of real note for you?
I think Tennessee's in really good shape with Malachi Bennett, who is the wide receiver DB out of the same high school R.J. Perry's from, down in Fairfield in Alabama. And then I think I haven't seen the Dillsworth kid out of over towards the Greensboro area. He's a good-looking kid. I mean, he's a fraction light, but I mean, as far as being put together, good-looking kid.
And finally, as for staff changes,
I mean, I said a week ago, Jesse's number, I thought I was going under on that.
I'm taking the under right now, too.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's not at least one more, but I'm taking the under at this point.
And we'll see. We'll see what happens there, and we'll see what – I mean, I don't think Pruitt's got a timetable for naming a running backs coach. We'll see if another name may or may not pop up in the coming days. We'll talk much more about that moving forward in our Friday podcast, and certainly on the message board as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the VolQuest.com podcast. For Austin Price, Jesse Simon, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.